I moved into my first apartment when I was 22 years old. And on my very first night there I heard something through the wall that I was absolutely not prepared for. It sounded like a couple. Enthusiastic. Loud. Every single night at around 11 p.m., like clockwork. I'll be honest, for the first week or two, I found it kind of funny. Because whatever was happening over there, it was always over in about 4 minutes flat. I almost felt bad for whoever was involved. Then one afternoon I was coming back from grabbing groceries, and I saw a man walking out of that apartment for the first time. He was maybe 75 years old, gray hair, moving slow, slightly hunched voice like gravel when he nodded at me in the hallway. And everything clicked. Nobody was having sex next door. That man had been watching adult content on his television with surround sound speakers at full volume every single night at 11 p.m. I never once complained. I never said a word. Honestly, I respected it. But that was just the beginning. Because over the next few years of apartment living I learned things about the people around me that no one ever asked me to know. Things that were funny. Things that were strange. And a few things that changed the way I think about the walls between us. So if you have ever lived in an apartment building and wondered what your neighbors were actually up to, buckle in. Because these walls talk. I had just finished losing my 5th match in a row at StarCraft when I completely lost it. I screamed. Not at anyone, just into my box fan, the way you do when you are a young man alone in an apartment at midnight with nowhere to put the rage. Full volume. Into the fan. Like an idiot. 20 minutes later someone knocked on my door. It was 2 police officers. They said they had received a noise complaint and were responding to a possible domestic disturbance. I stood there in my doorway alone, fan still running behind me, and tried to explain that I had been yelling at a video game. They looked past me into the empty apartment. They looked at each other. They left without saying much. My neighbor filed a noise complaint because I screamed into a fan. Alone. At a video game. I think about that a lot. But okay, not every story from those walls was embarrassing. Some of them were genuinely unexpectedly beautiful. A few doors down from me lived an older Chinese man, I would guess somewhere in his 60s. 3 nights a week, like a ritual, I would hear him singing through the wall. I could not make out a single word. But the feeling in it was unmistakable. Whoever he was singing to, whatever he was saying, he loved that person completely. You could hear it in every note. I never found it annoying. Not once. It was one of those sounds that made the building feel less like a building and more like a place where people actually lived. What got to me though was what happened when I did not hear it. If a few days went by with no singing, I would catch myself wondering, is he okay? Did something happen? I had seen him twice, maybe 3 times total. Always on the balcony with his phone up to his ear. That is how I figured it out. He was not just singing to himself. He was performing. For someone specific. Someone who was waiting on the other end of that call. I never knocked on his door. I wish I had. The man across the hall from me is someone I have never actually spoken to. Not once. But I feel like I know more about him than most people probably do. He is somewhere in his mid-40s. Quiet, almost never home. Some mornings I hear his door click shut, and when I look out the peephole he is already moving down the hallway, suit pressed tie, straight hair perfect. He drives a BMW M6. I know this because I have seen him pull out of the lot a handful of times, always early. Always looking like he is heading somewhere that matters. Once a month on a Friday, his 2 young sons come to stay for the weekend. I know this because the week before they arrive I hear him on the phone making plans. Not the kind of plans you make because you have to, the kind you make because you have been looking forward to it for weeks. He talks about where they are going to go, what they are going to do, what he wants to show them. And every night they are there without fail. I hear him reading to them before bed. Just his voice low and steady going through whatever book they picked. No TV. No noise. Just him and his kids and whatever story they are in the middle of. I do not know anything about his life outside that apartment. I do not know what happened with their mother, or why they only come once a month. I do not know if he is lonely the other 27 nights. But I know that when those boys are there he shows up completely. Every single time. I think about that more than I probably should. Not every neighbor gave me something that quiet though. Some of them gave me something louder. Much louder. The guy upstairs from me started learning saxophone about a year ago. From scratch. 0 experience. The first few weeks were rough. I am not going to pretend otherwise. There were sounds coming through that ceiling that I would not wish on anyone. But something shifted around month 4 and now this man plays like he has been doing it his whole life. Smooth, confident, genuinely musical. I work in a recording studio. I produce tracks for a living. And I started thinking seriously about knocking on his door and inviting him in to lay something down. Record it properly. Mix it right. Put it out. I still have not done it. I do not know what I am waiting for. Every time I hear him play I think today is the day I finally knock on that door. And then I do not. And he keeps getting better. And I keep standing in my hallway doing nothing about it. Maybe tomorrow. Now I need to tell you about the Bluetooth thing. Because this one still makes me laugh every time I think about it. I was setting up my own speaker one afternoon scanning for available devices and I saw something in the list that was definitely not mine. An open connection. No password. Just sitting there. I connected to it. I picked a song. I pressed play. The walls of my apartment shook. My roommate came sprinting out of the bedroom asking what on earth the neighbors were doing at this hour. I looked over very calmly and said that was not the neighbors. The look on their face went through about 6 different emotions in 2 seconds. I said that was me. I just connected to their stereo system. We looked at each other for a long moment. We did not need to do anything dramatic after that. Just knowing we could any night, any song, any volume was enough. We never touched it again. But every time that neighbor blasted music through the wall after midnight, I would catch my roommate's eye from across the room. And we would both just smile. Now, I need to tell you about the 2 couples. Because this one still gets me. My ex and I lived in an apartment where our bedroom shared a wall with the couple next door. Young, roughly our age, and we could hear them. Clearly. Often. At first we would laugh about it, that kind of nervous laugh where you do not know what else to do. Then it stopped being funny and started being annoying. And then, and I am not proud of this, we started faking it back at them. Just mimicking the sounds. Timing it perfectly. To see if they would notice, to mess with them, to get some kind of petty satisfaction out of it. We thought we were so clever. This went on for about 2 months. Then I ran into the guy from next door in the lobby one afternoon. We had never really talked before. Something about the conversation turned honest, and somehow I still do not know how we both admitted what we had been hearing through the wall. And he told me. They had heard us first. They assumed we were the ones going at it every night, and they had started faking sounds back at us as a joke. They thought they were messing with us. We had both spent 2 full months lying in our beds fully clothed, performing for each other, each side completely convinced the other side was real. 4 adults, 2 apartments, 0 actual activity, 100% commitment. We stood in that lobby for a minute just looking at each other. Then we both started laughing in that way where you cannot stop because you do not know what else to do. Okay. I need to slow down here. Because the next one is not funny. And I do not want to rush past it. There was a woman in my building. Late 30s, lived alone, fought with her boyfriend constantly. I would hear them through the wall, the kind of fights that go in circles where nobody is actually saying what they mean. Then he would leave and she would spend the rest of the night on the phone with her friends crying. One night her best friend got scared enough to call 911 for a wellness check. I came home to find 2 officers standing in the hallway outside her door. They thought for a moment I was the one who had called it in. I had to explain that no, I just live here, I am just trying to get inside. They went in. They stayed for almost 30 minutes. I do not know everything that was said. But I heard enough through the wall, something about not making permanent decisions when you are in the middle of the worst pain. Something about what is worth holding on to. Something about how this moment, as bad as it feels, is not the whole story. The officer doing most of the talking had this steady, unhurried voice. Like he had had this exact conversation before and he was not tired of it. Like he meant every word. I sat on my couch that night and just listened. I did not turn on the TV. I did not pick up my phone. I heard more than I needed to. But I am glad someone was in there saying it. She was okay. I saw her a few days later in the parking lot. She did not know I had heard any of it. We talked about the weather for a minute and went our separate ways. And then there is the story I saved for last. Because this one did not make me laugh and it did not break my heart exactly. It just quietly rearranged something inside me. I moved into my current place about a year ago. The first month was peaceful. Then the family next door arrived, a mom, a dad, and a young kid, maybe 7 or 8 years old. The noise started immediately. Running, jumping, screaming sometimes, hitting the walls, throwing things. The kind of chaos that follows a child who has more energy than the building can contain. But over the weeks I started noticing patterns. The way certain sounds triggered longer episodes. The specific routines that played out the same way every single morning. The repetition of certain phrases, certain sequences, certain times of day when everything spiked and then went quiet. I started to think, based on nothing but sound, based purely on what was bleeding through the drywall, that this kid might be autistic. A few months later, I heard the mom on the phone, just a sentence or two that drifted through the wall when things went quiet. And she confirmed it. Not to me, she did not know I could hear her. Just to whoever was on the other end of that call. Just stating it plainly, the way you say something you have already made peace with. After that, every time I heard him running or yelling or losing it over something I could not see, I did not feel irritated. I did not lie there, calculating how many hours of sleep I was losing. I just felt for him. For both of them. It does not make the nights easier. But it changes what you are carrying while you are lying there awake. That is what apartment walls do. They do not just let sound through. They let lives through. You hear the grief and the loneliness and the absurd and the tender, all of it coming at you at 2 in the morning, whether you wanted it or not. The old man watching his TV alone every night at 11. The man who sings for someone he loves 3 nights a week without fail. The father who reads to his sons every single time they visit, low and steady, like nothing else in the world matters right then. The musician upstairs who started from nothing and became something worth listening to. The officer who sat with a stranger for 30 minutes and talked her back to herself. The 2 couples who spent 2 months faking it for each other through a wall. None of these people knew I could hear them. All of them, without knowing it, gave me something. Here is what I keep thinking about. Some people say thin walls are the worst part of apartment living, the invasion, the noise, the total lack of privacy. But other people say it is the one thing that reminds you at 2 in the morning, when everything feels very small and very alone, that there are full human lives happening just a few feet away from you. Which side are you on? And if you have got a neighbor story that tops any of these, drop it in the comments. I genuinely want to read every single one. If this hit different, subscribe. There is a lot more where this came from.